Saturday and time for Mansfield and Mates, where we just kick back and talk to mates of ours and find out what they're doing and what's happening with their lives and what they've invented that's changed the world in the last week, things like that. Today's case is a case, he should be admitted, in the form of Tom London. Now, if you don't know who Tom London is, he was one of the pioneers of this genre in South Africa. Morning, Tom. Nice to have you with us.
Jeremy, such a privilege to be sitting with you. Thank you.
Now, you were one of the pioneers of this industry. When I say this industry, the vodcast and podcast industry in South Africa.
Sure. I've never thought of myself as a pioneer. I've always just been a boykie from Springs that grew up with a millie field at the end of his road and tried to do bigger things with his life. And I think it really just stems from my career choices, because I was working at 702, had been there for 8 years. I interviewed the CEO of Vodacom, Alan Craig Sr. at the time. And we started chatting about the possibilities of content on cell phones. And this was before the iPhone. It was before Facebook and the social media sites we see today, the proliferation of online content. And so back then it was just a dream. And I remember the first iPhone being released and getting my first iPhone when I worked for Vodacom. And trying to figure out what I could do with it. And I realized very quickly that the phone had turned into a camera and a screen. And I think the early work I did on my own Facebook page and some of the Vodacom content we produced and other content along the way was really just trial and error in the beginning and trying to learn the possibilities that existed with these devices that used to be phones and now are media devices. So yeah, I've never thought of myself as a pioneer at all, actually. It's just someone who was in the right place at the right time when these phones came into the country, and then try to figure out how to push content through them. I think to be fair and to be honest, I think I'm still trying to figure out how to put content through handheld devices.
What prompted you to do that, though? What made you go?
I think two things. One, I've got an entrepreneurial spirit. I grew up in a family where we always built businesses, so I think I've always wanted to have equity and ownership in what I do. And when you work in the broadcast space, there's no equity, there's no ownership. You're a salaried employee or a contracted employee. And so I've always got a natural tug towards wanting to do something myself. And then I think the possibilities that I believed existed when you take a look at the amount of cellular telephones out in the country and how they were all becoming smartphones at the time, and what opportunities there might be.
And opportunities there were, hey, and you managed to dig them out. What are the most insightful opportunities that you can think of that you managed to bring to the surface?
Well, I think one of the things we have to just realize as content producers in this country working in the online space is we're not America. We're not the US of A. Everything works a little differently there. A lot of people have got iTunes. So your audio podcast distribution platforms are set up. And we have a slightly different situation here. And market size is smaller. And so South Africa is a very, very interesting and difficult, I think, place to make money out of online content. Especially the kind of stuff we were used to producing in the radio space, where we were entertainment product looking for mass markets or big audiences. And one of the first challenges is trying to figure out how to make money out of content that doesn't necessarily have 2 or 3 million people consuming it. There may be 2,000 or 3,000 people consuming it. So how do you make that content valuable? And so I went to the retail space. I think some of the success stories lie in small retailers that use the services of our company. we sell vehicles. Help retailers sell vehicles is an example, and I don't need 1 million people to watch a piece of content on Facebook to sell one vehicle. I need just a handful of people. So I think that's one aspect of it, is actually trying to squeeze the juice out of the lemon that's there. And then in terms of big success, when you measure success, if it's in terms of numbers and views and stuff like that, two obvious examples stand out. One is my friend Garth Taylor, the musician, called me up and said he wants to do a Christmas song. And so the two of us, he wrote the song quickly and produced it. And then I got the cameras and we got in the car with his band and we sang along to the Christmas song and put it on Facebook. And I think that video has probably gone over 1 million views by now. And then my dad was very ill a few years back. He had cerebral malaria and he was dying in a hospital in the middle of nowhere. And I was at this hospital trying to get him out and trying to get him into a hospital in Joburg, and I was having no luck. And I went onto Facebook Live, and I thought if I kick up enough dust, someone in government or someone at the hospital in Johannesburg will say, just bring him. And it turned out a lot of people watched that live broadcast that day, probably over 1 million people. And people stepped forward and said, listen, we'll help. And so my father was helped thanks to the generosity of people who were watching a Facebook Live video. He was airlifted out of the middle of the bush to Morningside Clinic, where he was treated by the best doctors in South Africa and survived his ordeal. And it was all thanks to the power of social media and online content. There are other commercial examples, but those are the two that stand out in my mind.
Well, that must have certainly given you a hell of a lot of not only empathy with the medium, but also a lot of faith in the medium as well.
Yes. I'm both. I think I'm both a critic and a proponent of what we're seeing in terms of content nowadays. I think I really love the fact that we have these devices in our hands that give us access to information at the same level as anyone else in the world, and gives us the same kind of opportunity to produce content as anyone else in the world, and that's a great thing. And to be able to chat to a family member who's overseas on a FaceTime call or a WhatsApp video call and being so in touch with people around us, I think is incredible. I think it's going to take us a long time to understand how that's changing human beings and society. But I also think there's a danger in what we do, in that, I was never a fan of censorship because I saw censorship as a horrible thing. But we have a situation in the world, and even in South Africa today, where almost everything is unregulated when it comes to online content. I know we've got POPIA Acts and we've got all sorts of laws and regulations, but just switch on your phone and go to YouTube or Facebook, and there's all sorts of content out there. And some of it not very accurate, some of it absolutely false, a lot of it lies. I think there should be some regulation when it comes to online content. And I think a country should decide what's acceptable, what isn't acceptable in terms of speech and what we put out. Maybe I'm just getting old and I'm becoming conservative in my old age. But I think there's anything as powerful as the combination of cellular devices and online content. I think we should treat with a lot of respect. So both, yeah.
Yeah, which is understandable. I don't think it's a question of age or anything. I think it's more a question of maturity, and seeing what can come out and what you really don't want to see. The sort of the black zone. I think is a very dangerous area for anyone to start meddling in. Where do you see this all going, Tom?
Jeez, I don't know. I wish I knew. I mean, I remember sitting with the CEO of Vodacom about 10 years ago, and we were having the same conversation, talking about transfer rates, data transfer rates down fiber lines. And the question we were asking ourselves was, what speed is going to be enough in the future? And bear in mind, this is a decade or more ago. And I think, I can't remember what the download speeds were back then, but it couldn't have been more than a meg or two down a line. and we were thinking, okay, well, what if there was high definition TV being transported down a fiber line? What kind of speed would you need? And you were adding up, and we couldn't get past a couple of 100 megs per second. But we finally agreed that 1 gig per second, no one would ever be able to use 1 gig per second. And now you can call up a service provider and get a 1 gig per second line. And the man I was chatting with was an absolute visionary when it came to cellular and mobile technology. So I was trying to figure out the answer to this question with the best. And we couldn't envisage 1 gig per second lines, and 10 years later, here they are. So I honestly have no idea where this combination of technology and handheld devices, and then you throw in AI and Elon Musk with implants in the brain, and I think it would be foolish to try and predict what's going to happen in 10 to 20 years from now. The answer is I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. It's a fair answer, I think, because I don't think anyone claims to have an answer, and those who do claim, I think, are just out with the fairies and quite honestly have their own agenda behind what they're trying to do. And if there's somebody who reckons that they know what the situation is going to be, then please contact us. We'd love to speak to you.
Yes.
Yeah. info@mansfieldtoday.com. So, Tom, at the moment, what are you up to?
Well, I have a company with my business partner, and we offer a number of services. We do strategic communications for brands and companies. We produce online content. I present a show once a week for the organization Undoing Tax Abuse, Outer, the civil activist show, on a Wednesday night. That's on Facebook. And we're in the festival space, which took a bit of a knock the last 2 years, but we're looking forward to some good times in the music festival and cultural festival space in the future. So that keeps me busy. I've got this growing, I'm never satisfied though. I've got this growing interest in architecture and small space living, micro apartments, the way the world is moving to smaller accommodation, and how that could apply to the South African situation and the problems we've got here. So, I've got most of my work is in the online space, and then the rest of my thinking is trying to think about how you fit a whole life into 25 square meters. So those are the two things that consume me, is the media and content space, and then small space living, let's call it that.
It wouldn't work for me, Tom. Small space living.
No. Well, I didn't ever think it would work for me. I used to live in a 650 square meter house on a wine estate, and I left Stellenbosch some years back and came back to Joburg to live in a townhouse. And we ended up in a much smaller environment, and it was at the time when the tiny house movement was starting in America, and people were, losing their houses and putting their lives into trailers, really. But it's also coupled to, Faith Popcorn's identified it. People are wanting to simplify their lives and have more free time and stuff like that. So I think it's more than just how many square meters. But I agree with you. I think you can get too small. It can be too small.
Well, I was reading just the other day that the Swires Group in Hong Kong, who successfully managed to crack the code on space in Hong Kong, and to dumb it down, they said our buildings must be 1/3% retail, 1/3% of apartments, and a 1/3% hotel. And that's what they did. And so when the hotel industry was down, some other industry was up. And so they were very successful in not having everything hit the bottom. It all just wavered in their favor. And they're building a new development in Hong Kong at the moment. And the kitchen will have a microwave, a toaster, and a kettle, and that's it. Because
Yeah.
they say that the modern couple or singles they eat out, and if they do eat at home, they eat pre-cooked meals. They're not interested in cooking whatsoever because
Yeah.
it's just a hassle in their life, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, and I think it's a generational thing as well. I think, if you've got a family and 3 kids and a couple of dogs running around the yard, 25 square meters isn't going to work for you. But I keep thinking about students and student accommodation and the problems we've got with student accommodation in this country, or first-time homeowners. I just think we can do better than I remember turning the soil on the first house at Cosmo City when it was put up. And I've been into a lot of RDP houses over the years. And although I think we've done a lot in South Africa to get people under roofs and inside 4 walls, I think there's space to redefine what 40 square meters should look like. And I think there's space to redefine what a student needs in terms of accommodation and how much it should actually cost them. Because the smaller you go, the cheaper it becomes. And I think we should look at financing models and options. And I really think there is an opportunity in South Africa to build a lot of accommodation really quickly for people who need it at the price that they can afford. I believe it exists. I don't know enough about the industry and the market to call myself any kind of analyst or expert in it. In fact, I'm trying to learn every day and learn from people. But I do think inside every problem there's an opportunity, and one of the biggest problems we've got in South Africa is housing and student accommodation, and there must be a massive opportunity in it if you manage to put the right pieces together.
Tom, you've certainly put the right pieces together so far, and we continue to watch you and see what pieces you will continue to put together. Tom London is... I don't know what to describe you as. I know he's a mensch. He's a good human being, but he's a digital entrepreneur, I think would probably be the right wording to put there, and outthinker. And he was our guest on Mansfield today. Tom, thank you very much for joining us.
Jeremy, thank you. And before I go, I think it would be remiss of me not to look back to your career and what you did for broadcasting in South Africa. And firstly, to say, just as a broadcaster to another broadcaster, thank you. Thank you for everything you did in the broadcast space. You invigorated an industry and you inspired many people, including myself, to push harder and learn more. And I'll always be grateful to you for playing such a big role in the space that I love, broadcasting, and being an inspiration to me. And secondly, thank you for all those smokes we used to have on the balcony in the middle of winter, where you'd constantly remind me that Zippo lighter fuel-made cigarettes taste cuck. Lots of memories I've got of our crossing of paths at Prime Media Broadcasting, and I recall them fondly, and I just wanted to say thank you before I go today.
Thank you, Tom. It has to come back to the smokes on the balcony, hey? Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah. Tom London on Mansfield today. Thank you for joining us. If you did enjoy the show, press the subscribe button, and we'll catch you next week once again. Bye-bye.